image of God.
All right, let's go. So today we're talking about God. Go ahead, Mel. Oneika, what do you guys want to say? I'm like, I don't even know where to kick off this. We just got off the podcast with Aurelia Pratt. So I know we kind of touched a little bit about God on there, but I figure this is like a big topic. I'm like, I know we're going to try to make this as short as possible, but this is a big topic.
Yeah.
That's why I'm kind of like, where do you want to start with it?
You know, it's before my trainings, I'll have like a sit down or a call, and I go, okay, if you want to do Reiki training or intuition training, tell me, like, what is God to you? I'll like, vet them. Like, what is God? What is spirituality? Who is your team? And they'll be like, what's my team? Just by their answers alone, it's a yes or a no if we're going to work together, right? And usually it's like, I don't know. And that's usually the yes. And the God, luckily since I've been training for, I don't know, like 10 years with intuition and how to really get people grounded, I love hearing all the answers of what God is. And for the most part, I would say on average, people will say God is love, right? That's usually the answers I get. And for me too, it's like God used to be like Jesus to me, like a figure. And now over time, it's like, it's all living things. Like that's what God is to me. What is God to you?
I think this question is really interesting because I think I've been asking myself that. Growing up, I think I was just taught, and after learning, the Bible and the way to teach it, I always like, all right, omniscient. My words today are not working well.
Omniscient?
Yeah.
Right.
Omnipresent, and that is the way that like I was like, well, that's God, and I was like, that's great. That we can all say that. But also learning like what to call God lately has been a big thing for me. I'm like, what do you call God? Do I call God because that's what I know God as? Or do I call it creator? Do I call it, universal being? I think that's a good point is that, yeah, God is love. I think the easiest way to say is God is within us and around us and in all things. But that's the way that I would maybe define it the best. But, I'm still sitting here and the questions in my head is still replaying. Who's God? What is God? And I'm still thinking it to like, how would I even respond to this? Because I'm so trained to respond to it in a certain way. It's like, but I don't believe that. I'm like, I don't know. God,
Yeah.
I just say he's the creator. I'm like, God's creator. That's the way I see it. Plain and simple, God's creator. And lately I feel more comfortable saying creator than I do God. But I don't think that matters. I think it changes. What do you have to say, Oneika? You're the other. What's your take? I'm intrigued.
As the only atheist raised person on the podcast, I don't think I think of God as God. And that is probably as directly related to the fact that I grew up with an atheist, and not because I don't believe, but I think of God as an essence and a presence that's ineffable, that can't necessarily be explained by logic or reason. But I think of it as a universal life force. And I think that a definition that really resonated with me was right after I met Mel, and it was right after my dad had died. And in my reading with Mel, we were talking, she had said that whenever I would see like a rainbow or a crow and sort of out of nowhere, that would be my father. And so that was the day of my father's memorial. And I had gotten a card from somebody, a grief card, and I opened it up and there was a rainbow on the card, and I just like flipped out and showed it to my sister. Then I was on Amazon and I was looking for a book on spirituality, and the first book that came up was a book that was yellow with a blue crow on the cover, and it said Conversation with Spirit. And I like dropped my phone. I was like, whoa, who is this Melanie person? Like, ah. And so I instantly downloaded it and read it. And Spirit, I think of God as spirit is the long way of me saying this. And it was this idea that we all come from the same place and we make choices about whether we come back. And it's almost like if you think of universe or spirit as like a tree trunk, we are all branches of this one main tree. And then you could have like so God is like this main tree, and then there's like a big branch and then little branches that come off of that and leaves, and that's us, and we can come back. So that's how I kind of think of it. And it really resonated. That really resonated with me, and it just made so much sense. And it was a definition that I had heard like in Seth books and all this stuff that I know people think are wacky, but I read the Seth books and I'm like, this makes total sense to me. Like, and when I read Conversations with Spirit, I'm like, this makes sense. Like, I don't know why I think that, but it makes sense. So this is what God is for me.
Love it.
Have you ever read
all the above
with God? Have you read Conversations with God?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Actually all three. All three.
I didn't even know there was 3.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, there's Conversations with God, book 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, maybe I have read all.
I need to go there.
Oh, it's really good. It's good. It's a really good book. Was it Neil Donald Walsh? Is that who wrote it?
That's it.
Yeah, and it's. I think I did review all 3. I have it on audiobook. But I enjoyed it. It was good.
There's a wonderful book called The Answer Man. It's a movie called The Answer Man with Jeff Bridges and Lauren Graham. And it's a fictionalized version of Neil Donald Walsh, like this guy who wrote like a book like that. And no one's ever met him in person. And he wrote this book, like Conversations with God, and then he like disappeared. And the reason he disappears is because he never heard God talking to him. And so he just wrote this book and he thinks that he's a phony, but God was always really talking to him. And his back goes out one day as he's supposed to be writing his second book. So he has to go to this chiropractor. So he hooks up, he makes this connection with this chiropractor. It's amazing. It's called The Answer Man. And it's this wonderful conversation about God and what God is for different people. And it's wonderful. Like you have to watch it. And there's 3 pieces of advice, like never take advice from people who you wouldn't trade places with. Never say something that you can't take back. And things are what they are, so they can't be something else. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's really good life advice to live by.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that God is also like an intuition for me, and it's a knowing, and it's something that makes me feel very settled and grounded. And it's that knowing, like, yes, this is the way that I should feel in this moment.
A knowing. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's like pick a word, that's God. Like to me, it's like truly, it's like all, even the bad, right? It's like that's God too. Rejection is protection. I'll like say that in my head. It's just your intuition, just kind of like Aurelia, who we just interviewed, Imago Dei. It's like God is us, within us, and speaks to us as us. That's what it is to me. Spirit. Whew.
So you guys were like really about like, let's do this episode. I want to know like what was drawing you into this conversation. Anyone?
I'll go.
Mel's like, yeah.
Well, no, because Oneika brought up the topic first. So I was waiting for her to speak.
I think I've always been curious about why people believe in God, what people think God is. I was always somebody who was curious about church and wanted to go to church because I always wanted to know what we were here for. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why am I connected? And I think it's really interesting that I had these thoughts as a kid. These were all things that were like rolling around in my head. Like even, I know a lot of kids think about death when they finally understand what death is. And I would think, well, is it just blackness? Is that what happens? And I'm just not here? Is there something else? So I think that's probably wanted to talk about it. Maybe part of it was just, I wanted to process this conversation with 2 two women who I think are very spiritually grounded and had very different relationship with God than I did. So I think I was curious about that. And just to hear what your takes were on it.
Yeah.
I think even, an atheist would probably get mad at me for saying this, but I think we all have our versions of faith and what we believe in. Atheists may not want to say that. My mother may not want to admit that, but I think my mother believes in things, and I don't mean as a materialist. I think my mom believes in things and creating beauty as a way to connect with the world around her. And she can pretend that doesn't come from a deeper place, but I think it does, because I think my mom is very specific about why things move the way that they do or how she thinks about certain things. And I don't think it's just because she likes a chair because it's expensive or it's nice. I don't. And she could fight me on that, I tell her not to at me about it, but it's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I was similar to you, like growing up in the Catholic tradition and, doing all the sacraments like baptism, the first communion. Even at 18, I was confirmed because I chose to be confirmed. I always, though, had this strong opposing opinion. I was like, I don't believe in a hell. I don't. Like, the Bible's like, if you do this, you're going to go to hell. I'm like, I don't believe there's a hell. And I even tell my mom, who was, we taught Sunday school together for a couple of years, and then I bailed, because I was like, and the talk used to be, if you do that, you're going to go to hell, like when I was little. And I was like, I don't believe if God or the connection to God or light is pure. I think if you do one bad thing, you're going to hell. Like, clearly I'm going to hell if it was real, because I've had a lot of sex before marriage. You know what I'm saying? So I was like wanting to challenge it at, I think around 9 or 10, I was really like trying to challenge it. And where I'm at now with my spirituality, it's like I even sat with my priest over and over, and I'm like, am I bad? I can see the future. I can see spirit. I can see demons. Like, am I bad? And he's like, no, you are. He used a word like anointed or blessed, and I was like, so what does that make me? I was like, who am I? And should I be a nun? I was very confused in my teenage years. And so I think being grounded now and my maturity of being an adult, it's this energy of like, God is whatever you want God to be, as long as you're a good freaking person. Like, that's God. It's connection to love, to light. Even though that's the classic love and light, I really do believe God is love and light.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Like, I was the same. I mean, I grew up both sides, I mainly grew up Christian.
Yeah.
My mom had converted right around, I forget, it doesn't matter. She stopped going to Catholic church, started going to Christian church. That's basically what I mean when I say converted. But I always enjoyed the Catholic look at way and the perspective of it. That's just, I don't know why. I think I like the rituals of certain things. But I'm the same. I never agreed with the whole hell aspect of it. And I was just like, no, that doesn't make sense. And even as a kid, I remember thinking like, that goes so against everything else that you're teaching in the Bible. Like, if you're telling me that God is forgiving and God is this and God is that, like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I remember even questioning it so much as a kid. I think for me, I was really confused in who I was, that I think I dove into, even as an adult, not even as a kid, as an adult, I think I dove into my faith so like head on because of my confusion, that it gave me a sense of control and definition. I felt safe in like defining myself in such a way that like, it had to be, black and white in order to like understand it and interpret it. But that did leave that space where I was like, where do I fit into this? Because I too had my abilities and gifts. And one of the churches that I went to, like towards the end of going to church regularly, was a church that actually told me I was wrong. They were like, it's from the devil. And I was like, but that doesn't make sense. Like, I was like, it doesn't make sense. And I remember at that point, I knew how to break it down in like Greek and Hebrew. And I was like, it doesn't make sense because like, here's the gifts of the Spirit. Here's where the Bible says it. Tell me where they took it away. It never says that God just was like, okay, now you don't have them anymore. And then I was like, you do understand, like, that's how the Bible was written, right? Like, you do understand it was like clairaudience and clairvoyance that wrote the Bible. anyways, I don't know. And then eventually kind of was like, I got to go figure this out on my own. I need to learn to define God on my own in my own terms and what that looks like. But you raised a really good question, Oneika, because you asked, one of the questions was, why do you believe? Like, why do you believe in God? And I was like, wow,
That's a real good question.
Yeah, we're both like, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't believe that God is a being. Like I'm not one of those people. I don't believe that God is a being. I don't believe that God is one monolithic voice. I believe more that God is nature. That's why I don't believe that God is good or bad. I don't believe that. I believe that God or spirit is balance. And
That's beautiful.
so there's not judgment there. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't think if God was just all about this idea of love in this like warm, fuzzy, nebulous sense, that the things that happen in the world would happen.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that God is a punisher, because I don't think it's one voice, but I think there is this sense of balance that in nature that happens.
Yes.
And this is where I think that karma also comes in, like collective karma as a society. We do things and the earth balances itself back. It's not like we're hurting these people because these people did this. I don't even believe that karma works that way. I believe that we put energy out and then it comes back. It may not come back to me. It could come back to people over there, because the earth tries to right itself. And that's like, and that's nature tries to create balance. Which is why, like, I think the earth will be okay. I think we're the ones who are going to be eliminated, but Mother Earth will heal herself and she will be fine. If that means because we need to be eradicated, because that's the balance that has to happen, damage that a percentage of humans have done. Not all humans, because there are like 20% of indigenous people who are like safeguarding this goddamn planet for us right now. So I don't like to lump them into when people are like, oh, people are doing bad things. Still, people all over the world are trying to keep this shit together, and we keep fucking it up. But I think it's balance. I think it's this sense of you have to understand how you're moving in the world. That's where I think like terms like ahimsa, which means like not causing harm, are important for God, for us to understand in spirit. How do we not cause the most amount of harm?
So beautiful. You had that thought process on Sunday when I took my nephews the Natural History Museum, and we watched a movie on the dinosaurs, and I'm like, fuck. And I was just like, Mother Earth, thank you. Like, it's just like, and just to watch movies on like how the whales create the poop for the food for the fish. It's like the circle of life. I'm like, that's God, nature.
That's magnificent, isn't it?
Yes. It's just like the body. When you really learn about the body and how it heals itself, it's insane to me. It's like, oh, the body knows what to do, right? Just like the kid who you throw it in the water, not how to swim. It's from water. So I agree with all of that. That's why there's probably, Isabel, you're struggling and figuring it out, because God isn't just one thing. It's all things.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think that there's many different, I'm going to say gods, in the sense that how you choose to define it is for yourself. There's not one way, and there's not one embodiment, and that we were told like this is the one embodiment. I don't think that, I can go on because my head's even going into a whole channeling space right now, because I'm like, yeah, we're not all from the same creator being. Like, I don't think that, like, but I do think that, God is you, God is me, God is who we are, God is within us, not outside of us. But it's also within us, as every part you said is nature, God is balance. So I think that is in a sense where I look at like, that is God. And it's funny because even though I'm sitting here thinking about, like, my head is spinning as I'm like, well, how does that define worship in a way of somebody that was like, well, we worship God. And it was like, yeah, but you have to worship yourself first. You have to worship yourself first. And when you start seeing yourself, I think, and like we talk about healing yourself and learning to look at yourself in a different light, then you also learn how to understand God in that as well. And I think it's a blending of it, it's a blending of this, it's a blending of that, and learning it. It's so funny when you really start studying like the I have mouth today. Ideology. Thank you.
Ideology.
Yeah,
Yes.
of it all, and how, like, you know, we were given this image of, you know, Christ to be like, here, this is what you worship, this is what it was. And the more I've dug into that reflection, it's just because that was, you know, that was supposed to be God. It's like, no, that's not at all who he was, or who he was trying to be, or who he was meant to be. And like Oneika, you said in the last episode, right? Like, that's not at all who he was. Yeah, you know, if anything, you know, I think it's exactly like, hey, the whole point of that was that, you know, he is who we are. That was weird.
Whoa, confirmed.
I was like, I don't even know where that noise came from. I'll have to go look in my cupboards. But you know.
Oh, you don't even know what that was?
Yeah, what was that?
I can't see it.
Was that one of your kids?
No, I'm in the kitchen by myself.
Huh. Okay.
Oh, we're gonna stage the house. All right. We're gonna stage the house. See, that's God. Yeah, you know, a lot of people go, are you religious or are you spiritual? I'm like, I'm both. And they go, how? And I'm like, well, spirituality to me is my connection to the light or source or universe or God. And just God is all living things. Just like Asui, right? Reiki, it's like, be kind to every living thing. That's God. So it's like, it's funny when people ask me that, thinking they're two separate things. I'm like, spirituality is your personal connection to the highest light, whatever you believe in. Yeah. So, I mean, we could dance around this because there's so many definitions because it's all the same. Like, whatever your definition is, I believe you. Because that's your
That
connection.
part. Whatever your definition, I believe you. And if your definition encroaches on my safety, I will push back, right?
Right.
Like, because for me, I think it's also about relationship. It's relationship with myself, my relationship with nature, my relationship with other people. And the two are related. I can't have relationship itself outside of relationship with other things because it's connected, because it's both. It's that tree branch, right? And I do like, Isabel, what you said about not that we have different creators, that really resonated with me. And you have to read Conversations with Spirit, because the person, Blauen Sky, I think, was the person who was channeling the conversation, and her husband was writing it down. And Brahma was the name that came through, but it wasn't the Brahma that we know from like Hinduism. That was just the name that came through for Brahman. And it's like, well, I'm like sort of Browen's creator, but you have a different creator and you have a different creator, but we all come from the same like tree trunk. They kept using this sort of tree analogy. It made so much sense for me. And that makes, and so you can sprout from different branches, even though you're all coming back from the same place. And when you think about various religions, it makes it makes sense. And that's why I really like when things make sense inside me. I'm like, yes, this is right. Because I can also trust when things don't make sense.
Yes.
And when they don't make sense, I trust that shit too. You know, like, I don't know about you. I don't know about you. Something's not right about you. And I'm trusting that. And I used to ignore that shit, right? I'd be like, well, no, that's just me. I would make the excuses for why I'm feeling that way, instead of saying like, no, I've done enough work where I can now trust my gut, right? Like I talked about that a few weeks ago. You had to learn. Now I know. I'm like,
yeah, that contrast. And it's like we have to test our beliefs every now and then, or we will get tested, meaning someone will walk into our life with the visual of spiritual and believes in whatever we believe in to be God, and then all of a sudden they'll do some shit and we're like, I've seen it through like almost the I don't practice what I preach, or the spiritual bypass energy, right? The opposite. So that's how you can feel or see that the contrast, if anything. Damn, I kind of want to go back to church. Like, I haven't been there in a while, and I'm like, I want to go back and just like sit with it. Because like today, I didn't even understand for so long, like, what's the difference between a priest and a pastor? Like, how can a pastor be married and the priest can't? learn all these things over, especially with my views being the way they are now, like everything is love almost. So it's, you're just making me think. It's a really good question.
I love that
Mhm.
she has a
What
that.
have you taught? Oh,
What were you
oh,
saying? I want
sorry.
to know your question.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I love that
It's a
Aurelia has a
question
church
for
and
you,
I wish her church
Isabel.
was here.
What did you say? It's
I
just
love that
breaking up.
Aurelia has a church and I wish her church was here.
Oh, yeah. Same. Same, same. We'll have to go visit Texas. Shoot. That'd be a fun surprise for her if we just flew in one day. Um, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you raise your children, Isabel? Like, are they Catholic? Are they spiritual?
Yes. No, they're not Catholic. It's funny because I think my daughter made a comment the other day, like, who's Mary? And I was like, literally, like, if I could show you, I have a statue in the corner. I'm like, she's literally in our kitchen. And if you walk upstairs, she's framed on the wall. She was like, so,
Your poor daughter.
and so I was like, when they were little, they were raised in the church because I was teaching in the church. So they were very much raised in the church, and they had that upbringing. So raised in the fact, like you don't understand, they would be quizzed. I would sit there and be like, why, who is God? He is, he is omnipresent. He is this, he's that, okay, why is there God? What is this? Like I would quiz them down. But we actually, when we left, I think my oldest must have been around middle school, maybe or so, maybe a little younger. And we went to a Christian church here locally that I really enjoyed and liked. And my youngest and my oldest was in the same youth group from junior high all through his graduation. But it was more for him like a talking group. He just was able to get support and talk and whatever. And the same, my younger one. But my other middle ones, I give room for my kids to define God the way they want to define God. And it's their choice. I do talk about God. They do know I believe in God. I do believe in a higher power. But it's also their choice in how that wants to be shaped for them. I do encourage them. But in the sense of wholeness for self too, like, like you got to think your mindset has to be this way and not this way. And, you need to focus how you say or manifest. You need to focus on your words have power. Like, so it's in a different sense of way than I was brought up. But they are familiar with the church because of course grandma's solid Christian. So, whatever that means, by the way, with that statement, but,
Like practice.
yeah, so they do know the church. I just don't go to Sunday school or Sundays every Sunday. And they did for a long time. I mean,
Gotcha.
we were there for 3 hours every Sunday. And they sat in that
Yeah,
row
no.
and we got, we were Reformed Baptist, so it was like a Baptist church, like and so yeah.
Strict.
Yeah, so it's very strict, but that's how it is now. It's quite interesting now. Jaden's 19. He goes to a Christian college now, and hearing him really start breaking down spirituality now. Like he really is like, gosh, man, he's like, they're so black and white. Like they're so just this one way of thinking. He's like, I just don't agree with that. And I'm like, and you don't have to. You don't have to. Like
Yeah.
here, and I have so many books. I'm here, you should read this. Here, you should look at this. Like this is the way you have to understand why that mindset of black and white is wrong. And here's how you have to look at this. What would you say if this? And he's like, and he's really coming to define it himself, and I'm just here to support whatever that looks like for my kids. And I think that's the biggest thing
It's
is
beautiful.
support it for whatever that looks like for each one of them. But I do hope that each one of them do believe in some kind of higher power, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Because I think that builds in faith and trust, and I think it helps you to navigate a lot of different areas in your life. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool.
I used to want to, I still fight the urge
Yeah.
to go off by myself and figure it all out.
Yeah.
Like go in a cave somewhere. I've really have always felt this is actually nothing. I've never even said this out loud before, but I actually do think part of my not settling down with somebody for so long was because I was fighting that urge, but didn't know how to articulate it. And I think part of me was scared to renunciate, but like, especially once I got dogs. But I
Yeah.
think for a long time, I was ready just to drop everything and go explore, and not to
Yeah.
run, but simply because I really have always been very curious
Yeah.
about this
Discovering.
connection. Yes, like deeply.
Yeah.
And when I was doing a yoga for cancer training at a yoga, it's really an ashram that's in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and um, the Swami, who is part of that ashram, he
Mm-hmm.
came down to our training to talk to us, and he walked in and he was asking if anybody ever felt the calling to follow, that they should get in touch with him. And had been in shavasana at the time that he was talking. I have to tell you, I literally
Mm.
had to fight every single urge not to get up, because I was like, I have to go right now. I have to go right now. And it was
Wow.
a very persistent voice for months. I just pushed it down, but like I was like, I need to go. I need to go. I need to, like, I can still feel it in my bones
Yeah,
that
that's,
I
I
wanted
mean,
I wanted to just jump up and be like, yes, it's me. I'm ready. And then I wasn't even worried about like leaving my family. It was like actually really my dog, that I was
like a
like,
true calling.
who's going to take care of her? Yeah, because she was like sick at the time, and I was like, who's going to take care of Dakota? I was ready. Like, and it's I think about that moment a lot, actually.
How long ago was that?
7 years, 7 years.
Wow. Wow, you're being called. I mean, it makes sense. That's why you travel the world and you teach at a lot of different places. And I find it so funny how you get so surprised when people want you to talk on the big stages about something you don't really know, right? In quotations, because I'm like, oh no, you pretty much are connected. I mean, and to be really honest, all the Catholic study, I mean, I went to Catholic school, right? We had church every day at school. And it was kind of fun actually, but because of the worshiping and the singing. But I didn't really get into I think when I started doing yoga in 2017 on a daily basis at a studio, that's when I got super connected, really, really connected. So I always look at Hindu, Hindu, Hindu tradition as a really big opening for me personally,
Hmm.
the back to God.
Yeah, I kind of agree with.
So when I look at you, oh, sorry.
No, I was agreeing.
When I look at Oneika's image of like light and God, I'm like, oh no, I think you're really connected more than you think because you're a yogi.
I kind of admire the fact, Oneika, that you have a blank slate in a way. That you were kind of like, yeah, your mom was atheist, but you kind of get a blank slate to really define it for yourself and what that looks like, you know? And I think that's the thing. Like for me, I think when I went to go through actually taking the time as an adult to define what it looked like for me, you know, I had kids. I was married. It was like, you know, it was different. My kids had to kind of evolve with me as I was evolving. You know, here they were from this to this, so they've kind of watched the development of it. And I say that because I think you're in a very unique and great situation to really take that time to define it and look at it in a way that whatever works for you.
I think it is part of the reason. I'm just making this connection out loud right now, but I think it is part of the reason why I don't have kids. I think there has been, well, I don't have my own kids. I think
Yeah.
I think there's always been room for me to think about this, but I was always I was too worried about what other people would say if I talked about this stuff out loud. I think especially my family, because not just my mom, but like my aunt, her sister doesn't believe in God, and you know,
Right.
it was my grandfather was an atheist. He didn't believe in God, you know, so all that kind of stuff. Even when he was dying, somebody, you know, I think somebody asked him, and I hope I'm getting this story right, just in case whoever my family might be listening. I think it was like when he was dying from cancer, somebody asked if, you know, he wanted like a priest
Like a
to come
blessing.
or something. And he was like, fuck you, no. Like, what is that like? You know, like to the end. He was like, no, absolutely not. You know, like get out of my room kind of thing, you know, and that was my grandfather, you know, like, but he had read the Quran and the Bible, and like he was educated and
Yeah.
well read, and he think he went to school traditionally, or, I think to the 8th grade, but he was very, well read.
Yeah.
But so I think I'm always thinking about it. It's something I always think about. I think it's something that is inside me. I think maybe it's what unconsciously drew the work that I did for so long. And, yeah,
Totally. That's beautiful.
yeah.
Can we go over like one before we have to go? One instance of like where you're like, that's God, like where it's like breathtaking, stops you in your tracks. You're like, no, that's God, or that's light. I mean, I can remember one instance when I was visiting you in New York when we met a man on the damn street. We're like, oh dear
That
God.
still was so wild. Okay, so Melanie comes to see me. We meet for the first time in person, but it was weird because it's like I had been with her in person before. So we have some food, and it's pouring rain the whole time we were together. I mean, pouring rain. We were soaked like wet animals, covered, and we were just so wet. So we're leaving this restaurant, and this woman was talking to us. And she said to both of us, "Oh, y'all are angels." It was wild. And then we walk another block, and a guy, an older gentleman, he was at mid to late 60s, said, "I'm really not scamming you, but I need some help because I'm lost. And I just got out of Rikers." And I said, "Where were you?" And he looked at me kind of funny, like, and he said whatever his housing area was. I was like, "Oh, you are AMKC." And he was like, "What? How do you know that?" And I told him I worked at Rikers. And it was very clear he was meant to meet us because he needed money to get to the bus. So Mel had money on her, so she gave this guy money. He started crying because he was just so grateful. But then we were leaving, and we kind of turned around, and he looked very lost, like just very confused because he didn't know how to get to the station. So we walked him. We were like, you need us right now. And it was so clear that we were put in his path to help him and I don't mean help from like some savior way, but he needed some assistance, and we were provided as assistance. And I think he was provided as assistance to us, to have us remember that, we are all really connected. That was really powerful when we met him.
That's pretty cool. I like stories like that.
Yeah. Like it was like for, I don't know, a month after, I was still like, like, oh, that's God. Thank you. Reminders.
Yeah.
What about you, Isabel?
I think it's a lot of different ways. I think God is, my kids, each one of my kids' stories, each one of how they came into this world, each one of, who they are. I think, God is the sense of the way my grandfather passed in this passing. I think, God is so much of, I have so many moments where I'm like, that's God, that's God in the moment, or in the way that I met my significant other, that's God in like what I get to sit here and do for a living. Sorry, there's a lot of coming and going in my house. Like all of that to me is like, that's God. I think there's moments every day where I get to go, oh yes, and that's where I just take those moments. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Even in the sense of now, like, I came on, earlier, and I was like, dude, this month has been really slow, but I know at the end of the month, or, which is only this week, it's going to come out. I'll be like, that's God, I'm good.
Yeah.
It's that trust I always try to teach people, that inner trust, that inner knowing, the inner sense of being, just, that's it. That's God.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
It's the trust even in the doubt, right?
Yeah, trusting even in the
1,000%.
There's so many moments of that.
And when it gets
I think we're saying the same thing.
I've been there with you too, Isabel, this month. I've had that. And that doubt is allowed. I think that's such a thing, and like, neo spirituality, that there's this sense that you're not allowed to doubt shit. And I just think that's so ridiculous. Like, doubt is a natural part of faith. Like, Because if you never doubted anything, I don't believe that you believe in anything.
That and you're not
you
learning.
believe in should fucking question. You should question at some point that you're not just rolling with it, saying like,
A
like
robot.
that's just wild to me. But
Right.
doubt is such a part of
Yeah,
intuition. Like
absolutely.
that's how you know your intuition is real, because there's that little inkling of, but yeah, I'm doing it anyway.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's that
That's what
overcoming
you
that
need.
fear,
Yeah. I don't know.
overcoming that doubt. Yes. It's what it's all about. I know we're going to cut it right now, but it's like, that's so much of my life. Like what
Yeah.
overcome.
Yep.
But I have a peace with it all too. And that's God too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't punish doubt. I don't punish doubt at all, because doubt is also a skill. It keeps us safe. It's like we have to have, that's why I think shame is also a thing. Shame teaches us not to be an asshole, because we feel shame when we act terribly.
Right.
We need that. We need that. We need to know that no, we can't behave that way. Now, overwhelming shame is an issue, but just like doubt, a little bit of doubt is useful. It means that I won't walk into traffic and when a car is coming and just say, no,
Yeah.
God got me. No.
Yeah.
That used to happen so much at Rikers, where people would just be like, God's got me, God's got my case. There was one time I was talking to somebody who was just so convinced that they didn't need to do anything about their case because God had the whole thing handled. And their lawyer even said to them, if you believe in God, you need to believe that God sent me as your lawyer here.
Yes.
Listen to me. I was like, thank you. That is what I am saying.
Yes. It's
not just sort of, it's not magical thinking. It's rooted in a belief system. It's rooted in action. And you can't just sort of like, oh, I wish I'm going to get $1,000. It's like the end of Under the Tuscan Sun, that guy who went to a statue every day to pray to win the lottery. And then the statue comes alive and is like, my son, buy a ticket. You have to do something.
Yes, you have to execute.
Yes. You have to do something.
Or there's this old meme back in the day, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, I saw maybe in Catholic school, and it was some guy drowning, and then a boat comes like, do you need help? And he's like, no, God's got me. And then a second boat comes, like, do you need help? He's like, no, God's got me. And then the guy died. And when he went to heaven, the guy goes, why didn't you save me? He's like, I sent you 2 boats, asshole.
That part. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. Why didn't you take them?
Like, that's me.
We think we know what it has to look like.
Right.
And we don't know. A mantra that I say to myself that I've been actually really using this month as I've been navigating a lot of doubt. Don't worry about the how, just be in the now. That's what I've been saying to myself over and over. Don't worry about the how, just be in the now. Don't worry about the how, just be in the now. And I don't have to worry about how it comes, but I do have to do things. I do have to take steps in action.
Gotta open your energy.
Yes, whether it's planning, whether, and I don't have to worry about how it arrives as long as I'm doing my work. But so many people think that they can, they think of manifesting, that they write down this list and it directly comes exactly how they thought of it. And that's silly. That's not realistic. And that's not trusting the balance of spirit and the understanding of how, how the earth works. I don't know.
I hear you. I even thought about when we were interviewing Aurelia, and I was like, I'm going to send your book to every person to introduce them to the podcast. And it's like, I'm sure she prayed for moments of like, please let me meet people who see and hear my book. And it's like, I'm about to purchase 100 books in my head. And she's like, thank you, God. It's through connection alone. Right. So yeah, like Oneika said, it doesn't have to look a certain way. God doesn't have to look a certain way. And God may show up differently in many different parts of your life. So, good topic. Excited for more.